Good morning. You're listening to the Blain's World Show, heard every Wednesday here on WPVM LP 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina. You can also listen online at WPVM.org and watch on WPVM's Facebook page. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield. I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week, we focus on the Asheville theater scene, as well as on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my first two guests, and they are Milton Crotts and Deborah Kenney. Welcome aboard, folks.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And what I'd like you to do, too, if you want to wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook world. So first time you've been on Facebook world, so everybody's watching, you can see Milton and Deb. And Milt is the music director and conductor for the Blue Ridge Orchestra, and Deb is president and board chair of the same organization. Milt is a graduate of the University of South Carolina with a doctorate in musical arts and conducting. He served as music director for the Blue Ridge Orchestra since 2011. Past academic appointments included associate professor of music at Davidson College and director of the orchestra and wind ensemble at UNC Asheville. He's conducted orchestras in Guam, Tokyo, across the United States, engaging audiences with creative programming and imaginative performances. Deb Kenney is a graduate of Butler University and with a Bachelor of Music Education. After retiring from a career in business management, Deb returned to her love of music by serving as president of the board of Blue Ridge Orchestra. And I thank you for doing that, Deb. It's kind of a thankless task, but I really appreciate the fact that you do it.
It's very rewarding.
Okay, well, that's the key, I guess. And the question I'd like to ask, first of all, both of you, I'm always interested when I meet a guest for the first time, is how you kind of got into what you're doing. And so I mentioned that Milt, for example, had been studying music in college. But when you were a little kid, did you always know you wanted to be in music?
Oh, I never knew a time when music wasn't part of my life. My dad played country music, and I had a steel guitar taped with the 1-4-5 chord on it. So it was, I can't do anything else. So it was never a choice.
What was the first performance you ever gave in music? Do you remember?
Oh, I guess the first real, like standing on a stage may have been in the 6th grade playing The Stars and Stripes Forever on the tenor saxophone.
Okay. Now, Deb, I want you to keep this in mind, but I have this great idea for a fundraiser for your organization or some other organization. You don't where I'm going with this. What I want to do is like that performance you had as a kid, 6th grade. Was that recorded?
Are you kidding me? Back in those days, they didn't have cameras. I mean, it was the times when they were this kind of stuff. So no.
But, Deb, wouldn't that be a great fundraiser? And we do it for all the musicians. Everybody would do their first performance, So
wow, that's a great idea.
No, I really mean it. That not only you would do as a 6th grader. Deb, were you a musician also?
I played in elementary and high school. Yes, I played clarinet.
Okay.
But I did not have an orchestra to hear or perform. I grew up in the country. There was no such thing. The first time I heard a live orchestra was at Carnegie Hall when I was a junior in high school. And I sat there mesmerized and said, this has to be part of my life. And so I've been able to.
Do you still play the clarinet?
I don't. I don't play clarinet anymore. I play piano for fun, for me only.
So keep in mind as a fundraiser, and back to you, Milt, we'd have everybody, all the other musicians would all do their first number they ever played, so.
Well, I thought you were going to the point where you wanted me to pick the tenor sax up now at my age and play The Stars and Stripes Forever. And that could be a good fundraiser for every musician to play whatever they played for their very first performance.
Well, that's the idea of being, especially as you mentioned, most of them didn't have VCRs then, or they weren't recorded or something. So this would be passed on. That's exactly the idea of being. It's a fundraiser for the orchestra that to have them relive their first moment. Your story, Milt, you mentioned you were a kid. Pick up so you still play the saxophone?
No, I don't. Okay. I switched to the bassoon, then I switched to, I like to play everything. The reason I ended up being a conductor, I didn't fall in love with one instrument. I fell in love with the group. And I find my passion is bringing people together and creating an environment for them to do their very best.
Well, when did you start playing, becoming a conductor? When did that start?
Well, you know, and that's not something I think anybody can ever say, I want to be a conductor and here's the rule book. I mean, there is no. My band director had a kidney operation when I was in like the 10th grade, and he was out. And of course, the substitute wasn't a conductor. So I got to conduct the band for about a month, and I loved it. And my colleagues, who can be very brutal, you know, in the 10th grade, right? Especially when you're conducting 11th and 12th graders. Well, they accepted me doing that. And I don't know, I think maybe I ran a better rehearsal than my band director.
No, that's really a compliment to you, because I remember when I was in band in high school that, I don't think anybody would have been able to conduct, you know, a group, me or another kid to conduct other kids or something. So that was the beginning. That was the beginning of your career as conductor. Is that correct?
I guess so. I guess that's when I had the positive feedback about, hey, this is something I like. And then, you know, you go to music school, and I got the degrees in music education. And then the same thing happened again with an opportunity to conduct an orchestra and then a musical, which happened to be My Fair Lady. It was funny you mentioned that earlier when we were chatting before the show, but that was one of the first musicals I ever conducted.
Yeah. Now, have you done also, so aside from conducting orchestras, so you've also conducted orchestras for show performances as well?
I've done musicals, choirs, jazz bands, German Oktoberfest bands, world folk choir, music from the Republic of Georgia, Corsican music. I'm everything. I'm a folk musician. I play the mandocello. I have a few gigs at the Biltmore in their winter garden at Christmas time and the flowers. So I do gigs as well.
Question to put you on the spot. Do you have a favorite kind of music?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, it's Stravinsky right now. And that's because that's what our next concert, July 24th and 25th, will be. So my favorite music is whatever I'm working on at the moment. But if it's like a gig at the Biltmore, it might be Edelweiss, an instrumental version of Edelweiss. Or in this Saturday, I'm getting to play a great memorial service for a friend, and I'm working on playing a Shokin Farewell. So my favorite music is whatever the next thing in front of me, the next performance coming up.
By the way, great response. And I heard it one other time. A football coach was once asked what was his favorite place to be coaching at. And he said, word for word, you know, football coaches move around. He said the same thing you did. He said, you know, 8 different jobs. And every job he's had, that was his favorite job, you know, at present.
Right. You always hear the phrase of you're only as good as your last gig, but I don't believe that. You're only as good as your next gig, right?
Great response. Deb, let's talk about this next gig that's coming up. And specifically, let's talk a little bit about the orchestra. For the benefit of the folks who aren't familiar with it, could you give a little background of Blue Ridge Orchestra?
Certainly. The next concert coming up is Milton mentioned, July 24th and 25th. It is a subset of the full orchestra. The name of the concert is Summer Winds, and because it features the wind ensemble of the Blue Ridge Orchestra. So when we planned these summer concerts a few months ago, we couldn't be certain exactly what the restrictions would be. So we planned them smaller, and we planned them with smaller ensembles. So that will be a wind concert made up of the strings of the orchestra, winds, of the orchestra. And in terms of generally the orchestra, which is roughly 65-piece full orchestra, these are people who perform for the love of it. They are volunteers. They are from Asheville or the Asheville area. They range from physicians to librarians to retired musicians, music teachers, office managers. We have the luxury of Asheville being such a draw for talent, music and the arts both, that this community orchestra benefits from that talent. And we often start programs by saying that our musicians perform for the love of it. So the orchestra has been in existence for about 20 years now total. Began as a community orchestra and continues in that vein today.
Now, in terms of getting in the orchestra built, what's the process? In other words, Deb had mentioned that a lot of people come to Asheville with musical backgrounds or had musical backgrounds. And if they want to get involved, what do they have to do?
Well, it's the BlueRidgeOrchestra.org. We've got an audition site there, and so everyone has to audition. So you have to have a background and an experience. While we say community, we're doing Stravinsky's Octet for Winds, and September 11th we're doing Beethoven's Eroica, the first movement, Mahler's Adagietto from Symphony No. 5, and that's not usually what you think about community orchestra. I mean, we have folks with degrees in music who have had full careers in music, and if somebody wants to get involved, they can submit the audition online, and the musical excerpts are all there. It's easy to put it into a Dropbox and send it right along, and we encourage folks to do that. But we have folks, like Deb said earlier, her husband drove in from Charlotte, 2.5 hours away, and Gary actually was featured with the Copeland Clarinet Concerto. And if anyone knows Aaron Copland's Clarinet Concerto, Copeland wouldn't even conduct that. He wouldn't have, Bernstein conducted it for him, right? So.
Now that must be tough for you though, as a director, that you get people to audition, to, have to say no to people. I guess that's kind of a tough job to do.
Well, yeah, because an orchestra only has 2 clarinet players,
right?
And there's more clarinet players than that. But then sometimes we do these symphonic concerts, and I'll need 5 or 6 clarinets. So it's great for folks to audition and just be on our list, because there's a lot of times we need that sub player, and sometimes we do the full band instead of just the orchestra. So yeah, we don't say no a lot. We'll find an opportunity somewhere for folks, and if we really can expand someday, we may even have that intermediate type educational teaching ensemble. That's a future goal for me, for folks that are at a level that they want to just play and maybe not perform so much and be put on the spot. And wouldn't that be a fun thought for the BRO later, if we can get the kind of support to start that kind of an ensemble as well?
Well, I can see also where people don't make the cut, so to speak, could volunteer to help Deb out, or I assume you could always use people to help out with the board. And talk about that process. You operate also, the board operates and run concerts is on a voluntary basis. Do you seek volunteers, Deb?
Absolutely. We have the board, of course, are volunteers and are active. Some are musicians from the orchestra. Some are people from the community that have an avid interest in music and the Blue Ridge Orchestra. But we also have a contingent of volunteers who serve us at every concert. They sell the tickets, take tickets, they usher, they help people with parking, and we are always looking for more volunteers, and we reward them for coming out to do that for us by having them hear the concert as our guest once they've volunteered. So that's a nice opportunity for someone to both do some volunteer work for music in the community and then also enjoy the concert.
And talk about the upcoming concerts. You had mentioned 2 coming up in July. Deb, a little bit more information on those?
Yes, sorry, Milt, you want to?
No, go ahead, Deb.
Okay, I'll talk about some of the details, and Milt can fill you in on the music
sure.
more. So the July concerts, 24th and 25th, are both at 5:30 in the Market Street Courtyard, weather permitting, of the Wortham Center for the Performing Arts. This last concert we just did moved inside to the Diana Wortham Theater because of the weather. And that concert is an eclectic. Milt has already mentioned Stravinsky on the program, but it's an eclectic mix from Mozart to Stravinsky. So a little bit of everything. I'll let him talk about that. Then the concert that comes on its heels is September 11th. And the name of that concert is The Heroes Among Us. So we are paying tribute to both, on the 20th anniversary, to the heroes of 9/11. We are also paying tribute to all of those frontline essential workers of the pandemic, from the first responders to the people who showed up at the grocery store every day to make sure we could get food when many of us were afraid to do that, to even go to buy our food. So we are going to honor them, and we provide $5 tickets to these concerts for anyone who was an essential worker during
nice.
the pandemic.
And if before I turn it back over to Milt, if folks want to get more information about the concerts, or just in general find out what you folks are doing, what's the best bet, Deb?
Sure. Either of those concerts, all the details, the times and so forth and locations are on our website. So www.blueridgeorchestra.org. And you can also see a lot of our offerings on Facebook and Instagram. But the best way to get information and buy tickets for the concerts is through the website.
Okay. Milt, back to you then. So we're talking a little bit about, what's going to be happening at those concerts. Want to jump in on that?
Well, that's September 11th. I'm excited about it because it will be in the theater of the Wortham Center for the Performing Arts. But like our concert this past weekend, we were able to open it up and be in the theater because it was raining. I was never so happy for it to rain because we did Vivaldi and Copland's Hoedown. Franklin Kill was featured on the Haydn Cello Concerto and in C, and what a terrific turnout we had. So I'm thrilled to turn around now, and that was basically strings. We had a 25-piece string orchestra because they weren't blowing in everybody's face, right? So that's when we programmed the strings first. Now we've got the winds coming down, and what an ambitious piece we're opening up with a Mozart serenade, and that features 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, and 2 horns. And then we build that, we add 2 flutes and do a Schubert piece. But between that, I'm doing something called utility music by Paul Hindemith. A lot of folks aren't familiar with Hindemith's music, but he wrote this piece for 2 trumpets and 2 trombones, and it's called Morgen music. Means morning music. And he specifically said, I want them to perform in the tradition of the medieval era when one would welcome the sunrise from the top of a tower, blaring their trumpets. Now, I haven't figured out how to get us on top of the roof of the Wortham Center yet, and I'm not sure if that's legal, but the least we might be able to do is blow our horns out the window of the French Broad Chocolate co-op, which is right next door. So that's my goal for tomorrow, is to see if the French Broad Chocolate guys will let us open their windows and be the tower.
How cool would that be, Deb? I love the idea.
Yeah. But what else is cool about the program on July 24th, 25th? I know it's all winds, and so there needed to be a little break in there. So we've got this lovely soloist, Chris Leek is playing a Bach prelude that usually everybody knows Yo-Yo Ma plays on the cello, right? But he's doing it on the vibraphone. He's adapted it for the vibraphone. And so that's going to be a nice little break from all the wind music. And then we go into the Stravinsky Octet, which is a very ambitious piece, but interesting for 8 wind players, a flute, a clarinet, 2 trumpets, 2 trombones, and 2 bassoons. And so that finishes out the program right there. And that's the winds. But any questions about that? Anything that comes to mind?
Just one thing you mentioned in terms of preparing these concerts. Talk a little bit about how much work that involves. You know, there's people come to a concert, they're just impressed. They say, hey, this is kind of cool. You know, a couple of people got together the night before and just did a jam. Yeah. It takes a little bit of work to prepare for it. Describe it.
Well, we started planning these programs back in January, for goodness sakes. The music was put online for them to download. Well, I mean, when you think about preparing, how do you play Stravinsky? Well, if you're a trumpet player and you're 55 years old, you started probably about 50 years earlier.
Right.
I mean, really, but for that specific piece, you know, one time I actually analyzed it with the choir. I figured out for every 1 minute of music that we had to perform, it would take almost an hour of rehearsal. Maybe not the same with instrumentalist, but I would say, you know, the folks have had their music, and I'm sure, I mean, they've got to be playing an hour a day or a couple hours a day just to have their chops where they can do this concert. You know, this embouchure you can't play Stravinsky, Mozart, Schubert, and Hindemith by just pulling it out of the case and getting the cobwebs off. So there's hours.
How often do you rehearse?
Okay, now this is one of the cool things about the community aspect. We rehearse once a week. Now, usually with a professional group, you might come in 2 rehearsals, Thursday, Friday, do the concert on Saturday. But since we're all local and we're right here, we're rehearsing. Well, the string group that we just finished, I think we had 4 or 5 Wednesdays, and we did the performance. The Wednesdays, we're meeting on a Wednesday for 2 hours, and then a following Tuesday for 2 hours. And I've talked to our executive director. I'm going to see how that first rehearsal goes. There may be another rehearsal in there, but right now there's only 2 rehearsals for that concert.
You raise a good point, and I think probably Deb sees this in terms of her efforts on the board, but people don't truly appreciate how much time and effort a concert or performer puts into it. You know, it's like I'm friendly with a lot of musicians, including Frank Keel was a guest on my show a couple of weeks ago. He's a tremendously talented individual, but people, you know, get upset that they have to pay for music. You know, they have to pay musicians, not realizing, like you just said, that's a great figure. The 1 minute or 1 hour equals 100 hours or something, you know, and people unfortunately don't realize that how much time and effort this involves, you know.
But it is an effort of love. And,
True.
you know, I've always loved the word amateur because you know the true meaning of amateur. Ama is love. So one can be a really refined musician with years of experience. But if you don't have to do it for money, you're doing it for love, you're an amateur. So what a compliment. Like, you know, so an amateur is for the love of it. Because ama is for, amour is the French word for love, right? Amour. So amateur.
And then talk a little bit about how then the Blue Ridge Orchestra was going very well last year, and then all of a sudden, in March, things stopped. How did that impact in terms of the board, in terms of the whole orchestra process? What happened in March?
It was challenging, as it was for everyone in the world, but I still remember that day that the treasurer and I were sitting down in early March trying to think of the budget for the following season. And we had one more concert left in May for the season. It was going to be a wonderful tribute to Beethoven on his 250th anniversary of his birthday. And we had a whole season to think about. And as we sat there, we went through some examples of just what if we aren't able to perform May, and then we couldn't even conceive of not being able to do the next season at all. So we plugged in numbers and played around with it. And it was 24 hours later that I was assembling the board to say, based on what we were listening to in the news, we can't do this. We have to cancel. And it was that fast that it became obvious or headed in a dire direction that meant we wouldn't be able to perform. So of course, musicians are disappointed, but we all wanted to be careful and do the right thing. So we canceled that contract, and then a concert, and then we started thinking about how do we even think about the next season. So we made decisions about doing a quarter at a time.
Let me jump in a little bit. We're having a little trouble with your sound a little bit, so I'm going to kind of just maybe go back to Milt a little bit. And Milt, as we talk a little bit about this, you also, before the show, you showed me a brief clip. What was that clip of?
Right. Well, that was a clip from just this past Sunday. It wasn't a performance. It was the rehearsal before Sunday. So we've got a clip of Vivaldi, and it features our concert master, Hanako Hirschman, playing just a short, about a minute of Vivaldi, which we just performed last Sunday. Would you like to hear that now?
Yeah, Deb, if you can cue it up.
And this was a rehearsal, by the way, rehearsal.
You can hear it, you don't see it yet. Deb, I want to ask you. Okay, there we go.
There we go. Well, okay,
very-
that was it right there.
And must be
And-
very, very exciting for you, Milt. So this is the first time, I guess, performing live with all these musicians
Oh no, I've been. I
after
mean,
COVID.
oh yeah, and what a trip it was. I mean, just to I mean, when you dedicate your life to music, and then suddenly for a year and a half, everything just shuts down. But yeah. Hey, and by the way, that clip that you just heard, we have that exact clip on our Facebook page as well. So I don't know, you might be able to, if somebody wants to hear it a little clearer, they can go to our Facebook page and hear that very same clip there with Hanako. But yeah, it was wonderful to get back together again, for sure.
And to actually, very exciting for me too, and I'm sure for you as well, to actually see people's faces and to see the smiles, you know.
And just feel the energy of a live audience, and not, you know, just not the Zoom experience and everything like that. Just to be in an acoustic place like the Wortham Center for the Performing Arts. I mean, just to hear the pin drop, you know, you can hear a pin drop in there. And so that was just truly amazing.
And also, as you said, it's kind of interesting, but there's a tremendous difference even to watch people perform who are the musicians, to actually see their face and to see their expressions, as opposed to if they had a mask on, it wouldn't quite be the same thing too.
Yeah, no, I tell you the story about how Bernstein's got a YouTube piece with the Symphony 88 by Haydn, where he puts his hands down. He never moves his hands. Everything's with his smile, his chin, his lips, his eyebrows. He's conducting with his face. And it's just, you've got to have that kind of connection, I think, for live music.
Crazy question, if I can. If people see the Blue Ridge Orchestra, what should they be looking at when they watch a concert?
You know, I wish I could answer that question. You know, because I've had folks tell me the silliest things sometimes. I mean, gosh, I don't know how to answer that. I guess if you've got a relative up there, you've got a spouse, you might want to watch them. But and you might look at somebody and they yawn. You know, isn't that terrible to see one of the musicians yawn? And usually if I have a yawner, I try to put them inside the orchestra, you know, when I go to sleep.
What about looking at the conductor?
You know, and I have something I call visual noise. I try not to make a show because I think it's distracting. I do what the music requires, and I don't know what that is until that moment happens. I mean, if we're coming up, somebody's getting lost with a train wreck, then you're going to see me making the biggest motions you've ever seen, you know. But hey, for this last concert, I walked off stage. I left the stage for the Bach double concerto because at one of the rehearsals, it worked better without me there. It forced the orchestra to really listen to the two soloists, and heck, they were the conductors anyway. And so I said, hey, you guys, with your permission, I'm just going to go to the wings. And it was so beautiful. And even in the Vivaldi, there was one place where the Hanako is facing the audience. But in a rehearsal, she wanted to turn to the orchestra just to get everything really solid. And I said, just do that in the performance too. I said, you know, whatever it takes for the music to be together, you know, because I'm at a point in my career at my age where, yeah, I think that ego is checked at the door. And it's all about the humility of just being surrounded by such talented musicians. And I just want to create the environment for them to do their very best and just make beauty come alive.
As a recap, Deb, I'll ask Milt to answer it just because I think we're having a little technical difficulties on your end. But as a recap, Milt, the upcoming shows are what dates and how to get information on them.
Right. Well, you get information on our website at blueridgeorchestra.org or our Facebook page, Blue Ridge Orchestra. And right now we're looking at July 24th and July 25th, both at 5:30 p.m. And it's cool that it's going to be in the courtyard, the Market Street courtyard behind the Wortham Center. And so it's an outside, it's al fresco, I guess is the word, right? Al fresco is an outside concert. And so we hope folks will join. It's going to be a little over an hour. Great concert to bring the kids to, because if the kids, we're outside, you can get up and walk around, take a walk around, the block, and then come back if you want to.
And you have a great backup in case it's bad weather. We have a place we can go into. Is that correct?
Right there at the theater, hopefully, yes. But surprisingly enough, in the courtyard, we're surrounded by these brick, huge buildings. And so the sound just reverberates in there like a cathedral almost. So it really is a neat place to perform. And then I want folks to go ahead and, get on their calendar the September 11th concert that we'll be doing in the Wortham Center, especially with this honoring the heroes among us, and Beethoven Eroica, the first movement, Mahler's Adagietto, and then Franklin Kill, who you met, I think, a while back, interviewed him. He's playing the Elgar cello concerto with a full orchestra. So, and this, by the way, will be the full 65-piece orchestra on September 11th.
We look forward to it. Milt, I'd like to thank you for being my guest this first half hour on the Blaine's World Show. Also to Deborah, who's still, I think, with us, but Deborah, Kenney, thank you very much, and we'll hopefully see you soon. Be well. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, so as we can get the high-tech stuff here, we're going to try to make Milt disappear in just a second. Great. And as the next guest comes into the studio, I think he's coming in right about now. I'll just mention to our listeners that this is the Blaine's World Show you're listening to, and it's my pleasure to talk about WPVM. Our mission is to foster community through programming that cultivates dialogue to inform and entertain. The station provides the medium for artists, business, community leaders, and nonprofits to share their voice on live radio. Listeners are invited to help support WPVM's efforts by making a tax-deductible contribution. They can do so at the website WPVMFM.org and looking at the donate option in the upper right-hand page. It's next my pleasure to introduce my second guest today, and she is Eliza Burr. And welcome aboard, Eliza.
Hi, Blaine. Thanks for having me.
Okay, and this is very exciting, Eliza, because it's the first time I understand you've been on Facebook Live.
It
So
is.
you can wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook world who's watching you, okay? And you're going to be meeting with Eliza, who's the owner of two successful pet-related businesses. Preferred Pet Partners, a pet sitting and dog walking company based in Omaha, Nebraska, and the Pet Business Coach, offering coaching and resources to aspiring or current pet business entrepreneurs. Prior to launching her own businesses, she spent 30 years in corporate America in a variety of leadership and coaching roles before she jumped off the corporate ship 4 years ago to play with the animals full-time. I love that, to play with the animals. Can you imagine? Eliza lives with her awesome husband of 24 years in a house full of animals that bring her joy every day. How many animals?
We have 3 cats, 2 goats, and 6 chickens at the moment.
That is a house full of animals. And
Although not all of those animals are in the house, just to clarify.
I should ask also, Eliza, that I should mention that you're also a volunteer with me with Asheville Score. So it's nice to be with you in that organization as well. The question I ask always, Eliza, when I have a guest for the first time, that when you were a little girl growing up, did you grow up in Omaha? Were you in Nebraska?
I did not know. My dad was in the Air Force, so he moved around a lot. So that kind of continued into adulthood.
Okay. So when you were growing up, though, wherever you lived, did you always know you wanted to be involved with pets?
I always knew, yes, I knew I wanted to be involved with animals. I actually got an undergraduate degree in zoology, maybe not pets in particular. I wanted to be a zookeeper at one point, but yeah, I knew I wanted to be involved with animals.
What was the first pet you ever had?
Oh gosh, you know what? I had a cat. We had a cat, and I also had quails when I was pretty young. We had a couple of quails, birds that we'd keep in our backyard.
So you then always had this interest in pets. but you mentioned you took kind of a detour into a corporate type environment. And in that other life, what were you?
Yeah, it was a 30-year detour.
Okay.
I graduated with a degree in zoology, but promptly went into something not at all related to animals. I went into the medical field, into primarily into medical devices, into plant operations and quality assurance in that area.
So you did that, and then all of a sudden, you woke up one day and decided that you had enough of that, and you wanted to get in the pet business. What happened?
You know, it's an interesting story. Of course, I graduated. I went into the corporate area. I worked my way up the corporate ladder until reaching in 2013 what I thought at the time was the pinnacle of my career. I was the vice president of operations for a large consumer products company, and things were going well. When in 2014, late 2014, something amazing happened. I got fired. And of course, I didn't think it was amazing at the time. I was devastated. You know, that was my whole life. It really defined me. So I wallowed in it for a while, I'll admit it, and finally got a job in Omaha, Nebraska. That's how I ended up in Omaha. And it was a good job, you know, and it was only about half the responsibility and a fraction of the money, but I convinced myself I had bounced back, you know, and I started that job. I enjoyed that job. Fast forward 2 years, I was sitting at my desk in the corporate office and I was watching TV. And let me explain that a little bit. I was in one of those big open concept workspaces where there's just a sea of desks, kind of picture the secretarial typing pools in the 50s. And there's a big TV in the middle of the room playing constant slides of the mission, vision, and values of the company. And I was sitting at my desk watching these slides and I suddenly felt ill, just, you know, throw up on my shoes, ill. And worse than that, I was also gripped with the feeling that I was just in the wrong place. So I managed not to throw up, bonus, but I couldn't shake that sick feeling that I was in the wrong place. So I went home and I started searching for not just another job, but a different path. And I literally Googled what to do if you feel like you're in the wrong place and stumbled upon entrepreneurship. And I went home that evening actually and told my husband Bob that I wanted to quit my day job and be a dog walker.
Quite a shift.
So Bob is a wonderful, supportive person, and he said, "Okay, you do what you got to do." I started getting into it, and you have to realize I was in a well-paying corporate job. I knew nothing about starting a business, and you know, I was almost 50 years old at the time, so it was later in life. But honestly, it didn't matter if you would have told me I would have had to walk through fire to do it. I just knew I needed to make that kind of a change. So I started figuring out how to do it. And in 2017, I launched my first business, Preferred Pet Partners.
Now, how long did you take before you made the shift from working that one job you felt sick in to starting your first business?
I was doing both. I was juggling my day job and my side hustle for almost a year to the day before I stepped out of the corporate office for that last time.
By the way, as a compliment to you, and I know I do this with our SCORE clients, and I mentioned that you're a SCORE counselor as well, but what you did, I think, was just such a great way to do it, because you still had a backup, you know, you still had something to fall back on if you needed it, you know, as opposed to some people take the jump, and I give them credit, but it's a very risky proposition to give up everything and then all of a sudden start a new business. So 2017, you became an official dog walker, and you started a company. What was the name of the company?
Preferred Pet Partners was the one I started then.
And so you've kept that name since, is that correct?
Yeah. We're now 4 years old. So June, we turned 4 in June.
Okay. And talk about what kind of business is Preferred Pet Partners.
We offer in clients' homes pet sitting and dog walking. So there's no brick and mortar. We actually come into clients' homes once or even several times a day while they're at work or out of town, and take care of their pets.
Now, you started this in 2017, and primarily dogs and cats. Do you take care of any other kinds of pets?
Oh, we have all kinds of pets. It is 95% dogs and cats, but we've had, well, every kind of bird, I think, chickens, geese, ducks, peacocks. We've got a couple of peacock clients. We've had llamas, alpacas, donkeys,
Well, that's
lizards,
interesting.
snakes, that kind of thing.
Well, how about, and you've had snakes as well?
We do. We have a couple of snake clients.
Yeah. And you have to take care of snakes also, or they don't take care of themselves?
Oh no, you have to eat. They have to eat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we feed them and take care of the snakes as well.
Well, how did somebody get a background in taking care of all these other animals? Like you said, as a kid, you had cats or dogs, but what if you never had experience working with a llama?
You know, I actually am certified. I got certified when I decided I wanted to start the business. I took classes to become certified as a professional pet sitter, and learned a lot of it there. And a lot of it I learned as I went.
So there are actual skills, I guess, in taking care of different kinds of animals.
There are.
And I guess part of it you get is experience, you gain more experience. Are there
Exactly.
any animals? What's the most difficult animal you've ever had to take care of?
Oh, wow. That is a good question. You know, I don't think there's one species in particular that's harder than the rest. I think some of the challenge comes when, you know, we take care of a lot of senior animals or animals with ongoing medical problems. So there's a lot of medication, for example, you know, whether it's delivering subcutaneous fluids or shots or pills or, you know, liquids, whatever the medication is. And that has been a challenge at times, especially trying to give a scared cat hiding under a bed a pill when they don't want anything to do with you. But we've always made it work.
It's funny you say that, because my wife is going through that right now with our cat. It's kind of sick, and she's for the first time ever having to give a pill to my cat, you know, and she never done that before. And talk about what you tell people if they want to learn a skill such as how do you give a cat a pill? How do you learn that?
Well, you know, there's nothing like practicing. I have 10 sitters and walkers that work for me, and we train extensively all of our people. And you know, it's just a series of being with them to demonstrate how to give a pill. We'll do it a few times. We'll let them try it. It's just a practice thing, honestly. And it's highly dependent. I don't know about your wife's cat, but it is highly dependent on the cat as well. Some take them a lot better than others.
Well, also, my wife just told me she learned a lot of it by just watching YouTube. You know, it's just incredible. She couldn't believe how much stuff is available on how to give a pill to a cat. So it was kind of a learning curve for her.
There's a wealth of information out there, and they have it's hard to describe. I call it a pillar, but it's actually a stick. You can suction the pill onto the end of it and get it down to the back of the animal's throat and deliver the pill a little bit easier that way. If your wife wants to try that.
It's interesting. Or I have trouble swallowing pills, so maybe I can get that for myself as well.
There you go.
might work. But one of the cool things about you, Eliza, which just blew me away when I heard about this, is that so you had this pet sitting business in Omaha, and a lot of people, it's just a one-person operation. But you mentioned, how many people do you have still working for you in Omaha?
10 sitters and walkers.
And I think you're the first person I've actually seen this to be true. But you still maintain that business. So even though you're living in Asheville, you have an ongoing business in Omaha?
I do, yeah.
How do you do that?
It's been an adventure. You know, I knew I was going to be moving to Asheville about a year and a half ago. So I spent the pandemic, I took advantage of the pandemic to make sure all of our processes were documented and our people were trained in all of the various processes. So, you know, I have an amazing team to start out with, but we really solidified it during the pandemic. And then when I moved in August of last year, it went fairly smoothly. I mean, there was a little bit of a learning curve, figuring out how to run a business remotely, but my team is awesome, and I do the behind the scenes stuff, and obviously they're the boots on the ground in Omaha.
Which is really, like I said, really kind of amazing in that you're able to do this, running it here in Asheville. But now let's kind of fast forward to you being in Asheville. And so you weren't running on a day-to-day business, your pet sitting business, but you decided in Asheville, you kind of, I guess, broadened the concept a little bit to now you're working with other entrepreneurs to get them into pet businesses.
I am, yeah. I had such a great experience, getting into entrepreneurship and starting a pet related business that after about 2 to 3 years in business, I decided I wanted to give back, and I wanted to help other people be able to start their own pet related businesses, because it's just been such an amazing experience for me.
So if people then want to work with you in terms of learning how to start a pet related business, we're talking primarily dog and cat sitting. Is that what the primary business is?
That's my expertise. That's the one I've been in for many years, but I can help really all kinds of petpreneurs, all types of pet related businesses.
And talk about the process, because people don't realize that, people think we just call a neighbor and take care of the cat, but that's not a business. That's kind of what we call in SCORE. That's kind of like just a hobby. You're not really
Yes.
doing it as business. Talk about what people need to learn if they want to start their own pet sitting business. What do they need to pick up?
Well, certainly there's the pet side of it. I would recommend going through I went through NAPS, the National Organization for Professional Pet Sitters, to get my certification. And I would recommend definitely going through some kind of a program like that. But it's also the small business side of it. It's like any other small business. All the skills that come in handy when you're starting a small business come in handy when you're starting a pet sitting business as well. I will say the one difference, though, is pet sitting is a very, it's kind of a particular business, because you are going into people's homes and watching their family members. The thing most like it would probably be childcare, obviously. So it's a very personal, somewhat intimate business, and there is a lot of interaction, making people feel comfortable, talking people through the process. You need to be very comfortable with that kind of thing, and honestly love working with people as much as you love working with animals.
See, I've heard some people say just what you pointed out, that they don't have the problem with the animals, working with the animals. They have the problem working with the people or the clients. So I guess, and that's part of, I guess, what you have to learn to be take care of pets. It's you have to learn how to deal with a lot of different, not only animals, but a lot of different people, and it's.
You do.
It can be a challenge.
I've met a lot of pet sitters out there who, and they tend to be solo pet sitters who get along, and they'll tell you this too. They get along better with animals than
Right.
people. That's why they do what they do. But I love both. I love animals and people, and I think that's absolutely necessary if you're going to, grow your business into something similar to what we've got.
When you hire a pet sitter, what should you be looking for?
I'm a big believer in I can teach skills, but I can't teach attitude. So when I'm looking for a new pet sitter, I'm looking for someone who has been around animals, is comfortable around animals, but certainly someone who has an attitude of caring. It's a caretaker mentality, for example. Someone who's reliable, obviously, someone who is detail oriented. We handle an incredible amount of details on just a single pet sitting visit in this field. And then we spend a lot of time training people as well in the field on, like I said, how to administer medications, how to care for pets, what to look for in terms of animal behavior in pets. We do a lot of training on that side of it. But initially, I'm looking for a great attitude and a comfortableness around animals.
And you're pointing out the fact that a lot of people don't realize when they start their own businesses is there's a lot more to it than just like the business, just like taking care of the cats. or the dogs. It's also all the marketing of it. Do you help people with how to market this?
I can, yeah, and I can, and I do. There's so much to it. It's a little bit different in terms of business marketing, just because it is a very personal business. So some of the normal channels, print advertising, for example, may not work as well as going out to networking events and meeting people and introducing yourself and forming that connection, because they do want to know the person that's coming into their home to take care of their pets. So the marketing side of it tends to be more direct person-to-person contact, and a little less behind the scenes, I guess I'd call it.
Now, I don't know if you teach this, but one of the things I've been very impressed with pet sitters we've used is their communication skills. Specifically, and talk to me about this, is something you work with people on, that when they take care of your pet, the pet owners really like to know what's happening to the pet or how the pet behaved. And how do you teach people, or how do you tell people to communicate with the pet owners, either when they're away or even when they come back? What do you tell them to do?
We actually, that's a great question. We send an update, a visit update with every visit that we do. So we're sending the client every time we come to the house, even if it's 3 or 4 times a day, we're sending them an update with pictures of their pets. And the update is an art. I'll tell you, I teach and train my pet sitters in ways to relate to people and relate to clients, because I know, as a pet owner myself over the years, I'm a little bit stressed out when I have to be away from my pets. So I like getting those updates from my own pet sitter. I like to know what my cats are doing. I like to know that they got to play with their favorite toy. I like to know that they got a little treat, that they sat in their favorite sunny spot. Those are all things that make a pet owner comfortable, that their pets are having as good a time as they are at home while they're away. So I do try to impress upon and train my pet sitters to form those connections.
Because the very first time we ever got a letter from a pet sitter, it just blew us away. We'd never seen it before, but she was giving us a letter. And then, as you said, we were getting regular pictures, and my wife loved that. What about maybe a little bit of controversial aspect of the business? What about the use of videotaping? Some pet owners do, have their whole home set up with, they can see every 24/7, they can watch their cat or dog. How do you feel about that?
You mean, how do I feel in terms of having a camera in the home when we're in doing the pet sitting visit?
Both ways, just in terms of a owner, first of all. Do you think that's a good idea, that they should be able to see their cat or dog 24/7 when they're away? Some people, I've seen it. Have you seen it? I've seen it with the tied into the food, whenever the pet gets food. Have you seen that at all, or have you heard about that?
I have seen that. Yeah, I saw a device, a couple of years ago, where if the owner, it had a camera on it, and the owner
Right.
could see the pet through the camera, and when the pet was in front of the device, they could actually press a button on their phone, and it
Right.
shot a treat right out into the
Oh,
room
really?
for the pet.
I didn't see that. Yeah, it's kind of cool. But I was just thinking, you were saying about people with children. Some people, videotape their children all the time. They can see them all the time. I guess people could see their dogs or cats all the time if they wanted to.
I think that gives people a level of comfort. I don't have cameras in my home, but I can tell you, when I'm away, I am still thinking about and worried about my pets.
And do you hire a pet sitter?
I do, yeah.
And so what do you look, when you hire a pet sitter, some of the same kinds of things you train your pet sitters for? How do you assess, like, first time somebody's going to come in to take care of my pet? How do you determine if that person is the right person for you?
I've hired we moved around a lot in my life and my career, and we've lived in a lot of places. So I've hired a lot of personal pet sitters for myself. And what I look for is attention to detail. A lot of things, but primarily attention to detail. I want a pet sitter who is going to ask me a million questions, to the point where I might be annoyed, but I want them to ask me a million questions about what my pet's habits are, when they eat, where they eat, what they eat, whether they like to be alone when they eat or with someone else. The more questions they ask, really, the better they're going to be able to accommodate my pet's routines and habits. And I look for that specifically in a pet sitter.
It's such a great piece of advice, because I do the same thing too, Eliza, with our SCORE clients. When I'm working with somebody and that person, if he or she doesn't write anything down, I know I'm not going anywhere, because you want them to be interested in what you're saying. And that, to me, that's a great bit of advice you just gave. I have to think about that, see if they're asking you questions as opposed to you telling them everything. Mm-hmm. In terms of owning your own business now, that it used to be one thing to own your own business, but now you're running this business from afar. Do you have any advice you give to business owners?
I would say my biggest piece of advice is to admit when you need help. I think that especially when you first start a business and everybody talks about being an entrepreneur, it sounds like all rainbows and unicorns. And you get into the reality of running a business day to day and you realize quickly how very little you know. And you realize quickly that you need help. And I'm not just talking about technical help or administrative help. I'm talking about emotional support as well. It's definitely a roller coaster, and there's some really bad days, but there's also a lot of really amazing days. So, I think a lot of first-time entrepreneurs especially wait too long before they get help and find that support.
Well, just based on something you said before, does this mean you'll also rent out your husband to give that emotional support if somebody wants to start a business?
Yes.
But we're laughing about it, but it's so important, isn't it, that if you're going to start your own business, it's a really good idea to check with your spouse or significant others, even children, to see if they're really supportive of it. Because if not, it can make it kind of difficult, I imagine.
Oh, I imagine. Yeah. I've been blessed. My husband has always been my biggest cheerleader. He's amazing and didn't even flinch when I told him I wanted to quit my job to be a dog walker. So he's really fantastic.
And what's really cool about it, like you said, dog walker, but you're one of the few people I know who's taken it much beyond just being a dog walker, starting out just one person. What was like, when did you know you wanted to grow from one person? When did you make that decision?
Oh, I knew from the beginning, I wanted to build a larger business. So, we are still expanding now and we've just grown tremendously since the beginning. But I did it myself until I built up a client base for about 6 months before I hired my first sitter and walker. And then it just grew from there.
Do you see this doing this in Nashville at all?
I'm seriously checking into that right now. It's something I want to do. I've been focusing a little bit more here in Nashville on the coaching side of it, but I am considering also starting a pet sitting branch here.
So I'm also impressed too. I could see you doing this. Have you given any thought to franchising this down the road?
I have. I won't say I've thought seriously about it or talked to a professional franchisor about it, but it is definitely something that has crossed my mind.
Because you just seem to have a model for this that it's just really perfect. It seemed to be able to know what to do to get it off the ground. And that's what I guess you work with. When you work with other people, you try to give them that same model or same way to get the business off the ground.
I do. This is where my corporate career has been tremendously helpful. I have a lot of years spent in corporate in process improvement and process optimization. So I've been able to bring that knowledge into really creating a very solid base for my business and sharing that with others.
If folks want to get more information about your business or starting their own pet sitting business, what's the best bet?
Sure. They can reach me by email. I'm at thepetbusinesscoach@gmail.com, or they can log on to my website, thepetbusinesscoach.dog, D-O-G.
Okay. And when they go there, what will they find?
They will find some information, obviously, about me and what I do. I do offer as well a free initial 20-minute strategy planning session. So from the website, they can log on and make an appointment, and we can talk about where they want to go with their business.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'd like to thank you very much for being my guest the second half hour on the Blaine's World Show. It's a pleasure to finally get to meet you, and someday I'll even get to see you in person, perhaps. I'd like to thank also my guests the first half hour, Milton Crotts and Deborah Kenney from the Blue Ridge Orchestra. I'd also like to thank my producer, Amy Prisnash. And I look forward to having you join me next Wednesday here at 9 a.m. on WPVM 103.7 Asheville, North Carolina. You can also listen online at WPVMFM.org and watch on WPVM's Facebook page. And as we wrap up here, Deborah, Liza, what I'd like you to do is just you stay on. I'm going to say goodbye to our audience here. I'll just catch up with you for 1 second. Okay, that'd
Sounds
be great.
good.
So again,
Thanks.
great. Thanks for being with me, and I hope to see everybody next week, same time.